Time for another review. Alright then. Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Kevin, I am a geek. You are watching Kevin the Geek, and it is time for another New Who Doctor Who review. This is the Season 3 finale. It is The Sound of Drums and the last of the Time Lords. If you are new to the channel, please do like the video, subscribe and turn on notifications. So, just before I get started, you may have noticed that yesterday for Torchwood Tuesday, there was no Torchwood review episode. And that is because, well, the next episode for the Torchwood review is the start of Season 2, which, chronologically comes after this episode of Doctor Who. So for this week, the Torchwood review will be coming out tomorrow, and it's going to be Torchwood Thursday, just for this week. But we need to talk about The Sound of Drums and The Last of Time Lords. I am still a little bit hit and miss with this episode. I'm not quite sure what it is. On one hand, I think it's not a great season finale, but at the same time, I think it is a good season finale. And this is the problem, I think, sometimes with two-part stories. They are reliant, I think, sometimes on both episodes being good. And I feel that the second episode isn't as strong. Last of Time Lords isn't as strong. And is that me being a little bit biased towards the end of the episode when the Doctor has his stupid Jedi flying ghost moment thing?
Tell me the human race is degenerate now. But they can do this.
I've mentioned it before on the channel that I really don't like that. And obviously from a context of the show, it does kind of make sense, but I still think it's bloody ridiculous. Let's talk about the generalization of the whole. First of all, we have to talk about John Sims coming in as the Master. And for the vast majority of the fans, who probably this is their first introduction to the Master, this and Derek Jacobi from the previous episode, there you got just enough of a sense of how ruthless the Master can be with the Derek Jacobi Master. Here, you get a sense of how truly insane and crazy he really is, whilst also at the same time being quite calculating. I really like John Sims as the Master. There are moments that he goes, for my personal taste, a little bit too pantomime villain-esque, but as a general rule, I really liked him. And one thing that I do find interesting is the whole idea of his obsession with power. And that's most noticeable with Lucy, his wife. Now, in the first part of this story, you see her kind of, in a way, fulfilling a companion-style role. And he even refers to that as his faithful companion. But over the course of the year that never was, what I like is you see the, in a way, kind of domestic abuse that she suffers. And that is an interesting touch that they go down. Because right towards the end of the episode, you see through the makeup and stuff that they've done, she's very clearly been abused, even to the point of physical violence. She's got bruises on her face and everything. And that is really sad on one hand that they felt that they could put that into a family show like Doctor Who. Yet at the same time, I kind of praise them for it. Because it goes to show that it's not just, some humans that do abuse them. It is any kind of relationship where someone, I'm not going to say man, because women can be abusers too. Yes, stereotypically, it is more likely to be a man. But when someone has power in a relationship, that quite often can lead to the abuse of that power, which then can manifest itself into domestic abuse, whether that is in the form of violence or verbal abuse, many different ways. So I do quite like the fact that they kind of touched on that. Now, as an overall story, it was reasonably good, reasonably strong. But I don't know what it is. I just still feel the second part just kind of lets it down a little bit. It's just not quite as strong as the opening part with the sound of the drums. And I think it's because of the focus on Martha. I don't think she got a great story. What she did in it was really good. The story of it was just a bit for me. But, she did a good job. And the supporting cast around her, Captain Jack was great. The family were really good. Even though I now think that we don't get to see Mr. Jones or Tish ever again. I think we see Martha's mum in one episode at the end of season 4. But other than that, we don't see them again. And that's one thing that I feel kind of is let down with this episode. Because when you think about the final aspect of it, time gets reversed, and all these people that were there on the Valiant when that happened, being at the eye of the storm, they remember these events. And it gave a lovely moment to Martha's mum when she held the gun and was pointing it towards the Master and saying he deserves to die. And obviously Tish was saying earlier in the episode about he made him stand on the deck and watch the islands of Japan burning. They've gone through hell in this last year. And it would have been really good to see the repercussions of them remembering. Even though it technically didn't now happen, it would have been really nice to see, whether it's in this season or wherever, where they kind of go from here. Because they've seen a lot. And if they're going to remember it all, that could really mess with your mind. Now, the other thing with the whole Martha's mum holding the gun to the Master, the bit I didn't quite like is the Doctor didn't quite allow her the chance to make that decision not to shoot him. Because you can see his hand kind of comes into frame and kind of pulls it away before she breaks down and cries. And if he'd given her a few more seconds, I do believe she would have put the gun down. But I think it would have been nice for the Doctor to allow her that opportune moment to make that conscious decision not to shoot him. But it did also allow for the great moment where Lucy shoots the Master. And that is very believable. Because to the extent that Mr. and Mrs. Jones and Tish all got put through the ringer by the Master, Lucy got the most of it. And, that is a very believable reaction as well. And just the look on her face, where it was just so emotionless to an extent, I really, really like that. The one thing that I did kind of pick up on this rewatch that I haven't really kind of seen before, Martha basically has the same team. in both episodes. She has a doctor, i.e., the doctor, and also the doctor who obviously sells Martha out in the second episode. And then she also has a man who does a lot of good stuff, but is also prone to lashes of violence. And she has that from Captain Jack, but then also you have that with Dr. Tom Milligan. And what I found interesting, and maybe it's because I've been doing my reviews of Torchwood whilst I've been reviewing this season. If you have seen the episode Countryside in Torchwood, there is a scene very similar to this scene in The Last of the Time Lords, when there is a moral quandary where you're speaking to the villain who you can't understand their motivations, and you're asking, why are you doing this? I just don't get why you would want to kill people and cannibalize them and all this different kind of stuff. And in Countryside, where it's actual cannibals, he says this. In this episode, in The Last of the Time Lords, they asked the Toclevane this.
What about us? We're the same species. Why do you kill so many of us?
Because it's fun.
It's very interesting, the responses that you get with both of these. Because in the Torchwood episode, Gwen is just shocked. Absolutely shocked at the horrors that she's hearing. Whereas in this one, Tom just gets his gun out and shoots and kills the Toclevane. And I think that kind of stems back to how Lucy's feeling, because you're going through this horrendous period that the world is basically being destroyed by this megalomaniac. And you would do things that you would never, ever ordinarily do. Tom is a guy who has sworn himself to helping and protecting people. He was a pediatric nurse or doctor or whatever. And so his gut instinct is always to help and to heal. Whereas here, his first response is now to kill. And I found that really, really interesting. Now, the music in this was absolutely fantastic. You kind of got little snippets of the song This Is Gallifrey in Utopia. And here you get it so much more. And I love that piece of music and everything it kind of stands for. It was a piece of music I never really kind of caught the first few times watching this episode. But these days I really do take notice when I do hear it. And the rest of the music in the episodes was really, really strong. I mean, the one bit with the whole, the here come the drums, here come the drums. That bit, I was just like, is that pushing a little bit too hard or being a bit too cheesy and a bit too on the nose? But I think they do just enough to get away with that one. And the final thing that kind of both ties in with special effects and costumes that I kind of want to talk about is the makeup with the Doctor when he gets aged. And I mean more specifically the first time around, because the second time, obviously, he just becomes this little CGI goblin, if you like. But the first time, it's actual David Tennant wearing prosthetics. That looked fantastic. And they did, of course, kind of do that a little bit in the sort of dream sequence that they did in Family Blood and Human Nature. And you've got to give David Tennant credit as well. Because in this episode, the way that they filmed that was basically filming him and speeding up the footage. So it wasn't special effects or anything. But that basically meant for effectively, 10, 20, 30 seconds worth of footage that you actually saw, he was kind of having to ride around and go ah and everything in normal speed for a good 5, 6, 7 minutes to get the shorter amount of footage that you needed. So, fair play to him for going through that to do that. Plus, then he would have had to spend hours in makeup with all the prosthetics. So yeah, that's just a little something I just thought was really, really good. I do like practical prosthetics because when they're done well, they're done really well. Oh, and one last thing I do want to again just briefly touch on is the dynamic, I think, between David Tennant and John Sims, the Doctor and the Master. They played off each other so well in this episode. And I really wish we'd got to see more. Because if you think about Missy, who we see later down the lines, and Sacha Dhawan's Master, both of those got to spend a lot more time and a lot more episodes with their respective doctors that they worked with. I really would have liked to have seen more of John Sims with David Tennant, because they were just wonderful together. But what are your thoughts on the Sound of Drums and the Last of the Time Lords? Please do make sure you drop your comments down below. But I do have to rank the episode. Now, if you are new to the channel, the way that I score my Doctor Who reviews is I give 10 categories a score out of 10 to give an overall score out of 100. So, let's do the combined scores for this two-parter. And there you have it. So, this two-parter has scored 80 marks out of 100, which means that it is a B+ rated episode, just on the verge of getting into the A-. What are your thoughts? Remember, drop the comments down below. Remember to subscribe to the channel if you are new. I've got lots of content on the channel, so do please check out some of my Doctor Who rankings, my Torchwood reviews. I've even done a couple of Doctor Who related reactions, so check those out. But for today, my name is Kevin, I am a geek, and you've been watching Kevin the Geek. Goodbye.